After serving Ibrahim Traore with unwavering loyalty for over 15 years, a longtime bodyguard is suddenly dismissed under mysterious circumstances. What happened behind the scenes, viewers are taken on a gripping, emotional journey when Traore steps forward with an unexpected, powerful gesture that leaves everyone stunned. This video explores loyalty, gratitude, and the human side of power. It was a hot Monday morning in Ouagadougou, the kind that made the air shimmer and the streets quieter than usual. Captain Solomon, a broad-shouldered man, in his mid-40s, with calm eyes and a scar that ran from his chin to his neck, stood still outside the presidential palace gates. He had served as President Ibrahim Traore's chief bodyguard for over 15 years through coups, storms, threats, and celebrations. Stamped and sealed, "You are hereby relieved of your duties," effective immediately, no explanation, no reason, no goodbye. Solomon's hands shook. He stared at the palace one last time, feeling like a ghost in his own life. The soldiers nearby avoided eye contact. The silence was heavier than the heat. "Why?" was all he whispered. No one answered, and so he left the only life he had known for 15 years, with nothing but silence and a storm of unanswered questions. As the sun began to set, news of Solomon's dismissal spread like wildfire through Ouagadougou's crowded tea shops and dusty military outposts. No one could believe it. 15 years, one old colonel muttered he would have taken a bullet for Traore. Some whispered that he had betrayed the president. Others said he knew something he shouldn't, but no one dared speak too loud. In a nation healing from wounds of the past, trust was everything and fragile. Solomon, now in civilian clothes, sat quietly under a mango tree in his late father's compound on the outskirts of the city. His wife Mariam brought him tea, trying to smile. Their son Ismail, 12 years old, clung to his side. "Papa, did you do something wrong?" he asked innocently. Solomon looked away. "I don't know, son. Maybe I was just no longer needed." That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept replaying moments of standing between the president and danger of whispering. Quick warnings of saving lives without being seen. What had changed? Somewhere in the darkness, something wasn't adding up. Tuesday morning came with another strange twist. Solomon received a message from a former colleague, anonymous, from an untraceable number. "You're being watched. Don't come to the city." "And do you still have the file?" He froze. He hadn't thought about that file in months. It was a classified document, something Traore had entrusted him with during a chaotic night last year, a document that could change the course of the nation if it fell into the wrong hands. He had hidden it as ordered. He never asked questions. But now, with his sudden dismissal, was it connected? Did someone believe he still had it? Solomon's heart pounded. He looked at his wife. "We need to go." "Go where?" she asked, confused. "Somewhere safe, just for a day or two." The betrayal still burned inside him, but deeper than that was something worse. Fear not for himself, but for his family. As they packed quickly, Solomon glanced once more at the palace on the hill. From afar, he didn't want revenge. He just wanted to know why, and this journey to find the truth had just begun. By Wednesday morning, Solomon had moved his family to a quiet village an hour away from the city. It wasn't much, just a small house near the river, but it was safe for now. That night, as he sat alone, he opened an old wooden box. His late father had left him. Inside were family photos and a diary. He hadn't touched it in years. He flipped through pages until he reached one that made his heart stop. "If one day your loyalty is tested not by betrayal but by silence, choose silence and wait. The truth always walks slower than lies, but it never fails to arrive." Solomon closed his eyes. He remembered the night Traore handed him that file. They were in a moving vehicle. Gunfire had broken out not far from them. The president had whispered, "This is for the nation's safety. If anything happens to me, protect this file with your life." He had obeyed without question, but now who was trying to uncover it? And why had it was past midnight, so many heard a knock. Slow, careful, he peeked through the curtain and saw a familiar face. Major Dio, a friend from his days in the elite presidential guard. Solomon opened the door cautiously. "You shouldn't be here. I had to come," Dio whispered. "They think you're a threat, that you might talk about what the file." Dio said, eyes darting around. "There are some men in the system who want it badly. They're afraid of what it exposes." Solomon's jaw tightened. "But I never opened it. I just did my job." Dio nodded. "I believe you, but not everyone does. There's talk that..." So's heart raced. "Is he in danger?" Dio hesitated. "There's a meeting this Friday. Some insiders want to push him out quietly. That file, it might be the key to stopping them." Solomon looked down. He had been cast out like a traitor, but now his loyalty might be needed more than ever. By Thursday morning, Solomon stood beneath the old baobab tree in the backyard of his childhood home. He took a shovel and began to dig. His hands were shaking at 2 feet deep. He hit metal, a small, waterproof case. Inside, it wrapped in cloth, was the file, still sealed, still untouched. He sat back, breathing heavily. So many times he had wanted to forget it, but now it was all coming back. The mission, the trust, the duty. As he wiped off the dirt, his phone buzzed. A message, unknown number again, we're coming for it. Make your choice. Solomon's blood ran cold. He held the file to his chest. He didn't know what was inside, but he knew it was powerful and dangerous. Then he made a decision. He would go to the one man he trusted more than anyone. Even after being dismissed, President Ibrahim Traore, he didn't know how the president would receive him, but he had no choice. For the truth, for the nation, for the loyalty that had never left his heart. Thursday afternoon, Solomon wrapped the sealed file in cloth, tucked it into a small backpack, and kissed his son and wife. Goodbye, Mayam held his hand tightly. Are you sure about this? She asked, eyes wet. If I don't go, something worse may happen. This isn't just about me anymore. He replied. He borrowed an old motorcycle from a neighbor and rode toward Ouagadougou. The red dust covered his boots, his face, his past. He avoided main roads, stopped twice to change routes every mile, felt heavier than the last. By evening, he arrived at a safe house once used by retired security agents. It was barely lit, hidden behind tall grass. There, he met an old friend, Commander Fight, who welcomed him in silence. Solomon placed the backpack on the table. I need to get this to the president in person. Fights looked at him with concern. Trop is surrounded. You won't get close. I have to try. He trusted me with this. It has to mean something. That night, Solomon slept with one hand on the backpack and dreams full of shadows. He didn't know that someone was already following him. Early Friday morning, while the city stirred to life, a black SUV stopped 2 streets away from the safe house. Inside sat 2 men in plain clothes. Their eyes were fixed on the building. He still has it. One of them whispered, if he reaches Traore, everything we've worked for is over. We move tonight. Quietly back inside the safe house, Solomon woke to a loud bang on the door. He reached for his pistol, but it was only a delivery boy carrying a note from Faisal. Leave now. Your location is compromised. Take the canal path. I'll try to distract them. So didn't hesitate. He stuffed the file in a waterproof pouch and slipped it inside his jacket. He climbed out the back window and ran toward the old canal route, a narrow path hidden behind abandoned houses. As he ducked through thorny bushes, he heard tires screeching. They were close, but as he disappeared into the shadows, his mind was focused on one thing. Getting to Trop. He didn't care about who was behind this anymore. All that mattered was honoring the trust the president had placed in him, even if it meant losing his life. By midday Friday, President Ibrahim Traore stood in a quiet corner of the presidential compound. He had dismissed most of his advisors for the day. His eyes were tired, his mind was heavy. He stared at a small wooden door, one only a few people in the country knew about. It led to a hidden room, a quiet sanctuary. To the last page where a letter rested, he had written it 2 days earlier before the dismissal. If you're reading this, it means you've done what I hoped. You stayed true. Forgive me. I had to let them believe you were gone. It was the only way to protect you. In the file, suddenly his radio buzzed. Mr. President, there's movement on the Western Gate. A man claims to have something for you. He's asking for you by name. Traore stood up quickly. Bring him to the underground entrance alone, and no one follows. He closed the notebook and whispered to the candle flame, come back to me, old friend. We still have work to do. Solomon was drenched in sweat and dust when he finally reached the underground gate of the presidential compound. He was met by 2 silent guards who led him into a narrow tunnel, away from cameras, away from noise. At the end of the path stood President Ibrahim Traore. Neither man spoke for a long time. Then, with a quiet voice, Traore said, you came. Solomon nodded, eyes heavy with emotion. You asked me to protect it. I never broke that trust. Traore stepped forward and took the file from Solomon's. Shaking hands. I had to dismiss you, he said softly. If they thought you were still close to me, they would have taken you. Maybe worse. It was the only way I could protect you without tipping them off. Solomon blinked, his throat tight. I thought I had failed you. You never did, Traore said, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. Tears welled up in Solomon's eyes, but he held them back. I would have died for you. I know, Traore whispered, but now I need you to help me live for this country. In that moment, 2 men, one a president, the other his forgotten shield, stood not in power but in brotherhood. Inside the hidden room, Traore opened the Sealed file. As he read, his expression turned grim. "It's worse than I feared," he said. "These documents prove that certain high-ranking officials have been secretly working with foreign interests, selling intelligence, planning a quiet coup. I couldn't trust anyone else." Suleiman's fists clenched. Traore looked at him. "Names, men we both once trusted. They plan to announce my resignation at a secret meeting tonight, unless I expose them." First he paused, then added, "But if I move too soon, I'll be seen as paranoid. If I move too late, I'll be gone." Solemn took a breath. Then, "Let me be your proof. Let me help end this one last mission." Traore hesitated. "You're no longer part of the guard." "I never stopped being your guard," Solon replied. They locked eyes. Traore finally nodded. "Then let's finish this together." For the next hour, the two men worked silently, planning a careful exposure. Every moment ticked like thunder. This wasn't about revenge. It was about saving the future of Burkina Faso, and finally, it was time to bring the truth into the light. That Friday night, the city of Ouagadougou looked calm, but inside a high-old government building, a secret meeting was underway. 7 men sat around a long table, unaware that hidden cameras activated just hours earlier were recording every word. They laughed, plotted, signed papers, until the lights suddenly cut out. A projector came on the wall. Appeared footage from the hidden room. Traore the file. Their betrayal gasps filled the room. Then the door opened. President Traore walked in, followed by armed guards and sulling. "You betrayed this country in silence," Traore said calmly. "Now the country will hear your truth in full volume." One man tried to flee but was blocked. Another begged, "Please, it was just politics." "No," Traore said, voice steady. "It was treason." Solemn stood beside him, not as a dismissed guard, but as a quiet hero. By midnight, the conspirators were arrested. The file was made public. The people began to understand what had been saved. And President Traore, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't gloat. He simply turned to Solomon and said, "You protected me in the shadows. Now it's my turn to honor you in the light." By Saturday morning, news had broken across the nation. Television, anchors, radios, and online pages carried one message: a conspiracy against the presidency has been uncovered. But what shocked the country more than the betrayal was the press conference at 10 o'clock a.m. President Ibrahim Traore appeared before the nation, not with his generals, but with a man in a simple brown jacket standing beside him. Sleeman Bakotru spoke slowly. "This man served me for 15 years in silence, in danger, in complete loyalty. I dismissed him to protect his life because he was carrying something heavier than a weapon. He was carrying truth." Salami didn't speak, but the pain in his eyes said more than words. Traore continued. "Some call him a bodyguard, but to me he is a guardian of this country, and today I ask all Birkin Bay to see him for what he truly is, a hero." The room went quiet, then applause broke out slowly, then louder. Solemn tried to hold back tears. For a man used to shadows, the light felt almost too bright, but deep inside his heart whispered maybe everything was worth it after all. That evening, a special event was held in the courtyard of the presidential palace. It wasn't announced on TV. There were no loud bands, no journalists with flashing cameras, just a small crowd. Family members, old colleagues, and a few trusted officials. In the center stood Ibrahim Traore, holding a small red box. Solon stood before him in the same suit he wore when he joined the presidential guard. Sure years ago, Traore opened the box and revealed a gold medal. "Solomon Bako," he said, "for your courage, sacrifice, and love for this land. Burkina Faso honors you." Solomon's lips trembled. Traore pinned the medal on his chest, then stepped back and saluted him not as a president, but as a man honoring another man. Solomon tried to return the salute, but his hand shook. Then tears began to fall. His wife and son watched, crying softly. The boy whispered to his mother, "Papa is a real soldier, a real soldier." That night, under the stars, the crowd shared a quiet meal together. It wasn't about power, it wasn't about politics. It was about a man who never asked to be seen, and a leader who refused to let him be forgotten. On Sunday morning, the final day of the whirlwind week, a handwritten letter appeared in the official newspaper. It was signed by President Traore: "To every Birkin Bay child who wonders if loyalty still matters, let this week be your answer. To those who serve in silence, who protect without praise, who bleed without being seen, you are the roots of this nation." Suleiman's story is not just his own. It is the story of every mother who raised a protector, every child who waited at night, every citizen who believes that truth can Still shine in a world full of betrayal. May we always honor loyalty. Signed with a grateful heart, Ibrahim Traore. The letter spread like wildfire. People printed it, framed it, read it in classrooms and homes. Soleimani stayed quiet that day. He didn't want more interviews. He didn't want more honors. He just sat with his son, watching the birds fly over Ouagadougou. "I didn't do anything special," he whispered, but the boy looked up at him and smiled. "You saved a country, Papa. That's not nothing solely." Thought it was over. The ceremony, the applause, the tears, the president's letter. But on Monday morning, exactly 1 week after he was dismissed, his phone rang. A soft voice said, "Please be home by noon. The president is coming." He froze, not to the palace, to his small, dusty home on the edge of a Ouagadougou sulline. Rushed to sweep the floor. His wife laid out clean cloth. His son wore his best shirt, and at exactly 12 to plain black SUVs pulled up outside outstepped President Ibrahim Traore, not in uniform, not with guards, but in a simple white shirt. He walked up to Soleimani and smiled. "I came as a friend," he said, "not a leader." They sat under the mango tree in the yard. No speeches, no camera, just two men who had shared danger, pain, and trust. "For over 15 years you once saved me, without anyone knowing," Traore said quietly now. "I want your son to know his father is a giant." He gave the boy a small wrapped box. Inside was a pen and a letter. It was a scholarship full ride. International in Soleimani's name. Soleimani wept openly after the visit. Everything felt peaceful. Soleimani didn't return to work, not because he wasn't needed, but because Traore insisted he rest. "You've given enough," he said. "Now it's time to receive." On Tuesday, Soleimani woke up early, made tea, and sat on the porch. Neighbors waved, some walked up just to thank him. Strangers brought bread, fruit, and gifts for his son. The man who used to blend into the background now couldn't go a day without someone reaching out, but he remained quiet when asked what it felt like. He simply said, "I'm grateful." That's all. He didn't speak about the threats. He blocked a gun. He once took a bullet from the years of sleeping with one eye open. All he cared about now was his family and the peace that came after the storm. Late that night, he opened the box that Traore had given his son. Again, under the letter, was a second envelope inside. It said, "To my brother in arms, when this country stands tall, it is because of men like you forever in my heart." It was signed, "Your comrade." Ibrahim Traore held it to his chest and cried softly in the dark on Wednesday morning, exactly 1 week after his dismissal. The gates of the presidential palace opened one more time, but this time it wasn't for duty, it was for honor. A statue was unveiled, not made of gold, not too tall, just enough to show a man in plain clothes standing firm, hand over his heart. The plaque read, "Soleimani, the quiet shield of a nation." As the crowd stood in silence, President Traore walked up and gave the final salute. Then, in a rare moment, he wiped a tear from his eye. Not as a politician, as a friend. Soleimani's family stood beside him. His son raised the medal high for everyone to see. The story that began in silence ended in light, and as people returned to their lives, many couldn't help but whisper to one another, "Loyalty still lives here." Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart even a little, please do one thing for me. Like this video if you believe in loyalty. Comment for Soleimani to honor silent heroes everywhere, and most of all, subscribe so you don't miss more real stories that remind us of the power of love, service, and quiet strength. Let's flood the comments with "For those who give everything and ask for nothing." Thank you for watching.